Can you hear me? Check one.
I got you. I can't see you.
I can't see you either. Let's see what happens here if I do this.
There it is. Hey.
You were ignoring me on Slack, so I figured you weren't going to make it. I was ready to go solo.
You couldn't hold this hour by yourself.
I could. I mean,
you could. I think you could actually.
It may be the last time though. Hey, check this out. I can't do it. I can't. It looks terrible, but we're getting close.
Mm-hmm.
You see that overlay, but we're gonna still be StreamYard today because I got some. If you don't do it great, it's not worth doing. Is mine.
That's right.
Hey, we either got a lot to talk about or little to talk about.
Can I say real quick? I love the logos up there.
For you, it's right.
Well done.
Hey, they're good looking logos. They go well together. And absolutely, we'll keep. It's more than anything, obviously. Like we've got, I think, 0 viewers right now. So
perfect. Let's get all the good stuff out right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We have a lot of time to just tinker and avoid our real job. I'm sure our clients will be really happy while we make this. While we try to clean this up. So we can go long today. We can go short today. It kind of depends on what you want to do.
Yeah.
But we are here. Once again, AFWERX has no webinar. Thank you, AFWERX. I was actually going to do a task list back here, and it was like file a missing persons report for AFWERX webinar. I keep tagging
Get them on the milk carton.
Yeah, exactly. Where the hell are they?
All right, I'm seeing notes here. I guess John is seeing 6. Miss Cheryl Lockhart is here. Darren Long is here. Andrew.
Oh, that's rock and roll.
Yeah.
That's hey, it's not up to date. That's great. Let's go. Well, hey, there's so much to do. There's so much to do. There's people waiting. So hey, I think obviously when we started this, it was like, hey, they're going to do the AFWERX call, and there's going to be this uptick in the phase 1s and all these things that are going to go on, and we'll be able to say, all right, that's what the webinar said. They didn't say everything that they probably wanted to say or could say. Or any number of good or bad reasons, good content comes out of there. And then it's like, hey, let's just like pull the filter off and say what's actually happening. Well, for those that are familiar, they're not, they have these weekly webinars. They've had a long pause. They were supposed to come back. It's not come back yet. I think a big part of it is due to AFA being next week.
Right.
But there's still things that happen. Solicitation came out yesterday.
That's right.
And I don't know. I think it might be helpful to get like in the weeds. We certainly talked on our team and like, oh, I see that. I see that. I see that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I'll throw to you like at a high level, like you looked at it. What are you seeing, if anything, that's like drawing some sort of response?
Yeah, it's good. I think that's exactly where my mind was at for this call too. We don't prep for this call. I think we both just know the rhythm of what's going on. Yeah. And what's the big thing right now, obviously, is AFWERX open topic, SBIR, STTR. And so I was on the call with my team yesterday. Hadn't had a chance to look at it. In fact, it had just dropped. The SBIR did. STTR was still like 45 minutes from dropping. I think they dropped them about an hour apart from each other, I think is.
Oh, you were on it better than I was.
What ended up happening, I think, John Sitter will probably correct me. Wrong.
He will.
He will. I look forward to it every single time. But let's also start on the SBIR side. And this is exactly what I did with the team. So if any of the teams here, they're probably heads down, to be honest with you, on proposals. But it's like, all right, guys, this is what I'm looking for right off the bat. How many are they looking to award? 1. That's like interest number 1, right?
Yep.
And also VC ownership. Like, are they allowing those companies that have predominantly VC ownership to play? And then those are like the 2 big things. And then I just kind of take note of other things. So let's, if you want, and I'd love to get your take on, it might just be worth just throwing out this one data point for SBIRs. Mm-hmm. I mean, the glaring thing is 212 that they're looking to award. 212 of these things that they're looking to award. And for you and me, that number means something. Mm-hmm. For the new person, that's like, oh, great. That's a lot of contract awards. Well, for a lot of the guys in the space, that actually means something. And, there's history on what that number is. And I figured we would probably want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I hadn't gone back to the book. So again, keeping in the theme of our conversation, right? Like, it does make sense to like pull up this objective number. Hey, here's what the solicitation says, and here's how you should respond to it. Like in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't mean anything to anyone. I do think anyone's not going to apply that was going to apply. Right. I mean, arguably, maybe that there was someone on the fence of like, there's a 20% downtick in awards. So I think, 20%. It's more competitive. We can go back in the history of like where it started and how many proposals they started with, how many awards. And I honestly, do you remember what it was? I know what it was one round ago. It was 351 across the SBIR and SETR, 251. Do you remember what it was?
It was 251 just SBIR, 100 on STTR last round. So, so kind of jumping into that. And here's really where I think the insight and analysis, because I agree with you, Brent, it's not changing the strategy for us whatsoever that it reduced the number of awards by 15% from the prior round. Okay. It's a data point to focus, like to understand and say, okay, hey, it gives you a bigger picture of like what this program is potentially turning into. And, obviously if that number was 500 or 700, oh my gosh. Okay. That's a
which I didn't want, we internally, we didn't want to rule that out. Like, obviously something's happening. And maybe that's where maybe just for a second, I would like to just daydream for a second with the caveat. I think you'll say this too. Like, I don't know what's going on. I've had a lot of different conversations. We've been around longer than anyone that's currently at AFWERX, or, for the most part, probably absent some civilians that have been around since the beginning, but we've watched it. You can begin to watch trends. What do you think's going on? Because now you've said, hey, this is the last phase one for the next year. They haven't said that officially. It's just they put out a calendar that with no context in the webinar. And we are, STRATFI, and it's nothing about tech. There's a bunch of different stuff that's like they're kind of like operating in the shadows, and then they just drop solicitation, and there's 20% less awards on something that's basically they built the phase one open topic was the backbone of this program. So I've got some theories. I'd love to hear yours as to like what's going on.
I think, and this is just putting the data points together, right? Because I don't have someone on the inside just saying this is our grand strategy and this is exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it. But here's what I think, just from the data points that we have, is I'm assuming that they're looking to, like any organization, optimize resources and put the money where they're going to get the biggest bang for the buck. So they've been doing open topic phase ones for, was it 2-3 years now? It's been a great program. A ton of small bets are out there. Now let's be a little more strategic. If I'm AFWERX, I'm being a little more strategic and saying, hey, let's put some more money on phase twos, because you and I and a bunch of companies in this space have been feeling the heat on the low P wins for phase twos, where it's like, man, like we got a sponsor. We've talked about this in our life.
I got the 3-star that signed this thing, and I got everything.
That's exactly. And this is across and these are phenomenal proposals going in. Like it's not just seeing what sticks. I mean, these are fantastic proposals, fantastic tech, and at the same time, you're getting a non-select. You're not even getting select unfunded anymore. That's actually worth talking about a little bit too later down the road, but you're just getting non-select and it's dead right there. So I got to imagine AFWERX is taking not only just some of the money, but the human capital that it takes to get these phase twos across the finish line and on contract. That's what I would hope for.
So I tend to agree that that's possible. Unfortunately, we won't know, and they won't tell us until February. We won't know, and then we could certainly see the number of awards. If I was a betting man, and I am a betting man, legal in the state of Arizona. My wife said to me this weekend, we were putting together, looking, hey, football's back, baby, and I got a gambling buddy who's retired of 6, and I'm just looking through the odds, and we're like deciding who we're going to place a bet on, and my wife puts her hand on my arm and she says, hey, I'm being serious. Do you have a gambling problem?
So, God bless our wives, by the way. They are the backbone of the company, of everything. So I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Literally, yeah, no, and she's putting up with my gambling issue because I'm sitting here looking at like, hey, where can I find the AFWERX odds because I put it at about what you just described. For those that know gambling, that I had put it at a plus 220 in terms of, and plus 220 means it's possible. I'm hopeful, but I don't think it's likely. I think they're directing things. Actually, amongst our team yesterday, we had two conversations. They both could be true. One, you'll notice they didn't have anything about space in there in the same way they did previously. So maybe put a pin, boom, there. We'll talk about that in a second. The other thing is the really high win rate that we're seeing on STRATFIs and TACFIs. And historically, these have been separate pots of money, so to speak, even though they're all SIBR, just kind of way that I think it goes up is Office Secretary of Defense kind of like authorizes it, and then STRATFI. Like, I don't quote me on any of these, like the way that the money trickles down, but the bottom line is that Air Force is saying, here's your SIBR budget, you slice it up, but after you slice it up, you can't it's now an appropriation, so to speak. This is your SIBR phase 1, and you have to spend it on that. And so last year, I know for a fact, after they had taken the STRATFI proposals, and this was in the back half of 2023, they had a very delayed process to award them because they wanted to award more, and they had not accounted for the out years in the previous STRATFIs, all this sort of stuff. But it was one of the things that someone had quoted to me that I think is interesting. As they were looking at the STRATFI program, they were saying, okay, look what AppFit is doing. Look what the AppFit program is doing. We need to be doing that. That's a successful transition. Whether or not that's valid or not, and whether or not that's a ridiculous statement or not, I think to a degree it sort of is. But what it told me is like they are clearly feeling the heat to transition these technologies. And the reality is, if you look at the scale of which phase 1s are being awarded, I don't know, 1,000 a year, whatever it is.
700.
Whatever. The point is, it's a lot, and the amount that are transitioning is low. Here's the problem I have with that, though. Not to get too far off on a tangent, but by what measure? If we're saying we're transitioning within 5 years, 3% of the technology, is that good or bad? It feels low, but based on the fact that it was a bunch of small bets and you were able to take a chance,
that was always the plan, though.
Be high.
That was always the plan. We're placing, and that we have slide decks on that. Will Roper talked about, we are intentionally placing.
Wow, Bill, Willie.
It's Tari Istari. I still don't know how to say his company name now, but shout out to
Tari. Yeah. I think he forgot a vowel. Someone should tell him.
But yeah, I mean, like that was always the plan. We're placing a ton of small bets because we know only a certain number of those are going to transition to phase 2, and then a certain fewer select of those are going to transition to TACFI, STRATFI maybe, and then even a smaller number is going to go to phase 3. That is the plan. So, but I agree, there has to be some metrics tied to it, and whoever's driving those metrics is going to be, saying what is success. Like, how do you define success? How do you, where do you compare this off of? 3%, from phase 1 to phase 3. Oof.
We're trying to keep you from get you to see a quote. No, Darren's asking. That's not a quote, Darren. I'm just, and that it's also a bit of a, not nebulous, but the point is like phase 1 to phase 3 across the entire SIBR program, even within a specific agency, like each phase 1 program sort of has its own life, so if you say it's like specific topics, how many of them go phase 1 and phase 3? I would imagine the percentage is quite a bit more since there's a program office driving it. But I think the point there in that percentage, Darren, was like, it's probably pretty low, especially since, think about it. The open topic program is still in its infancy to a degree. Like you're talking about 4 or 5 years, like to transition, you're talking about tier 2, 3, 4 technology. Like it's gonna take some time, for you to be able to make an assessment. But the point there, Darren, was just to say, is 3% low or high? Let's just say it was 50. Let's say it's 20%. Is that low or high? But by what measure are we determining success? Because if we're just transitioning for transition's sake, it's like we got to transition more technology. Well, what if more than 97% isn't worth or more than 3% isn't worth transitioning.
Mm-hmm.
There's something to be said for the cream should rise.
Totally.
Yeah, I gotta argue both sides of it. But
well,
your point is
the argument too is that who else has done open topics the way AFWERX has? No one. AFWERX is pioneering it, and we're just kind of at the later infancy stage of the open topic, like what it's capable of, what it's actually opening up for not only industry but for the DoD in our world. So a lot of moving parts and pieces. So that's why kind of these little data points are interesting. I agree with you, Brent. It's I gotta imagine AFWERX is feeling the pinch to start being able to tell more stories of transitioned programs to phase 3. But yeah, I think more of what I was saying was, more, if more phase 3s requires more phase 2s, and they've got a lot of phase 1s, on deck in the hole even. I mean, there's a lot of phase 1s out there, and giving the companies a little bit of time, get more phase 2s out there, more TACFI, STRATFI, I think is what you were saying, so that you improve the odds for, more phase 3s that are out there. And I don't know, I pay attention to industry, what's going on, and I'm starting to see a lot, just like even with like Lockheed Ventures, buying, was that company called Terran Orbital or something like that? I never worked with them directly, but saw them kind of on a distance. Like there's a lot of just different things happening in the space where a lot of companies 2-3 years ago were getting their first phase 1 through open topics, and then just totally accelerated venture capital, totally accelerated, capabilities, R&D development, products that they're delivering. I mean, I think if you just look back at the last about 3 years, you just see open topics delivered something incredible that is hard to have a tangible number towards. But, from what my perspective, it seems like it's had an incredible impact.
Yeah, but in the same breath, as I'm just sitting here listening to you talk and thinking, I'm like, I feel like if they were honest, they'd want it to go away for a time. They're like this little golden child, this little baby that they birthed, this phase 1 open topic. It's pesky now. It's annoying.
Well, it's got to be. It's a lot of admin. It's a lot of admin work.
Well, and they can make quite a bit less if they. I mean, there's nothing wrong with holding contractors accountable. By the way, it's like if you're late to do something, or if you, there's part of. Actually, I'll end up on a rant. My point is like there's a lot of mechanisms that you can do to make it easier on yourself. I get it. It is a lot of admin, but there's admin people in the DoD to do the admin. You know what I mean? Like you would do yourself a service if you just communicated it. And so if you go back to the early days of AFWERX, when they were hosting webinars or just events that like, hey, here's what we're trying to do, like kind of rallying the troops, like. We need VC, we need tech, dual use tech, and like, let's go. And now I don't know, maybe I need more coffee, but I feel kind of like I'm watching like almost the pretentiousness of like, yeah, we're AFWERX and apply, don't apply, like what do we care? Almost this idea, but you've forgotten what the core reason this thing even existed. It was to attract interesting technology that the warfighter needed that they wouldn't otherwise really be able to engage with and be able to give that mechanism. So the heart of it's going away. So I get it. If you want to emphasize the transition piece of it, that's fine. That makes sense to me. But it's kind of like I think the U.S. is vulnerable right now too, but it's like we're having like a population crisis because people aren't having enough babies, right? It's like we started focusing on this new generation. There's all these nations that are just like not plucking out kids. I feel like it's almost like the same problem in the cyber world, in this open topic. It's like, we'll just keep reducing the number of phase 1s. Well, guess what? Okay, great. Maybe you're successful transitioning some stuff, but what are you missing today? You reduce it by 20%. You have 20% less touch points that you would have with industry because there are I don't know how many, I don't know what the numbers are, but there are going to be ideas and startups for emerging technology that warfighter needs birth today. And you are hey, AFWERX, Air Force, or open topic phase 1, you are less attractive than you were a year ago. You're less attractive than you were 2 years ago because of kind of what's playing out. So I think there's some risk involved with trying to like appease this transition piece, which I love. You in terms of like when we think about our own portfolio, hell yeah, we have more opportunity to do that with our partners. So I do think there's some risk involved.
It's interesting what you're talking about. You like, almost like as a startup gets a lot bigger, quicker, gets a little bit more notoriety. People start recognizing them in the space, and then they kind of forget who they were and what got them to that point, And I relate that to what you're saying about AFWERX in that, hey, you guys are kind of losing what was so special about you guys, where, yeah, I mean, it was work to win a proposal. Like it wasn't the easiest thing in the world, but it was doable. And like we could, companies that would never play in the DoD space, never, they found it attractive because like, oh, I could get $75,000, $110,000, and all I got to do is like customer discovery, and that'll pay for me to go to some conferences and see what's going on in the DoD space, get interested, get excited about the DoD. And, that there's going to be a 12, 14-month gap of 500, 600, 700 companies. Some of those will be recurring companies that already got the space, right? So, okay, but there will be a percentage of those that had never worked with the DoD, let alone the Air Force ever, that are coming in and potentially bringing game-changing technology. So I agree, man. It's a great point.
Something to look at. We'll see. And we'll be open about asking the question. I know you and I, we on our team, we interact with several people there. We know some people there, but I also think, like you had mentioned somewhere earlier, like I don't know what the master plan is. I don't think there's a master plan right now.
Yeah,
I get the sense that it's like, hey, let's kind of see where we're talking about fiscal year. There's a CR coming up. It's an election year. Like for us to like. That would be pretentious of us to be like, I know what the hell's going on. They're screwing up at every turn. Yeah. This is the way it should be. But I think if nothing else, like this conversation to whatever platform it kind of grows as people like, hey, I want to be part of the conversation, is to say, I don't think this conversation, the way we're talking about it, is happening internally. Mm-hmm. And so to whatever degree it's helpful, share this with an AFWERX person and just be like, hey, this is what we're talking about. This is what we're thinking about. If it's wrong, help us understand it. Let's team up and collaborate in terms of how the messaging should be. But
right. And the thing is, you won't see the impacts. You won't see the impacts until 2 to 3 years down the road. Right. So that's the hard part too. Yeah.
Well, okay. I love a good gripe session. My favorite book in the Bible, Lamentations. Just let me
lament.
Let me lament. But one of the things, well, actually, before we pivot, before we lament, I wanted to ask you about the space piece. John on our team, I thought, had a pretty good, just kind of, hey, just talking around what we see. And there was a little bit of a comparison of how it went. And we've seen it before when it was, even though I think we were part of it before the aerospace. I don't care. When did Space Force get stood up?
Space Force would have been 2019-ish. No, 2018, 2017, 2018, I think.
Space Force birthday, December 20th. But it doesn't tell me what year. 2019. Okay. 19, so that actually kind of coincided pretty closely with when AFWERX stood up. But so Space Force gets stood up. It's still a department of the Air Force, and then slowly like SpaceWorks exists, but it sort of doesn't at the same time. I know we're unfiltered. I know we're uncensored. I want to say some really not nice things, but some of the beginnings, and I'm like, come on, Brent, there's goodness in it. People tried, but it's like, I think just as a quick aside, that it's interesting timing for me. I got out in 2018, and when I looked at what was happening with AFWERX and SpaceWorks stuff, I'm like, actually, that was kind of fun. If it had kind of been brought to life before I got out, I think I would have stayed in. You know, to that point. And then when I saw the people be put into the positions that they were, and then not take it seriously, or like just like, oh no, this is who you chose to face. I'll leave it there. My point is SpaceWorks begins to exist, but it's still AFWERX. You know, still AFWERX is driving the train. They've already stood up the program. They've already got the AFWERX thing going on. But then last year we started seeing some specific topics come out, and SpaceWorks really driving the train and their own topics and whatnot. And I think you're seeing on the acquisition side. So as it relates to the Air Force open topic, I think they only did it once with the phase 1, where like you had to pick, is this an Air Force topic?
Yeah, I think that was just the last round they did that.
Right. And so you're like, you see what's happening, and how they take it. Like now it's not there at all anymore. How are you guys talking about that? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, well, you know, that's pretty late breaking from yesterday. No one really knew that until yesterday.
Yeah.
So I very much
to your point about that. I was on a call with a guy on my team and John, and he's unpacking this for one of our clients who kind of has a space and an Air Force. Like, oh, how do we want to approach it? And we're like, hey, here's what we're thinking about the budget. You know, this is how we want to approach it. We're going to have to make a choice, and this is why we think we'll make a choice. We're just talking around that the day before it comes out. So we were expecting it. We were expecting it to be the same.
My team too. I mean, you know, for our space clients, it was the same thing. Hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go in Space Force side because the application we're talking about that makes most sense is a Space Force application. Okay, so why is this important? Here's my thoughts on it. Why that going away, the ability to directly submit a proposal to SpaceWorks as opposed to Air Force. Now, that's all under the Department of the Air Force, so we got to make sure we're all saying the right terminology here.
Well, and one thing, I just don't lose your thought. Even when we were selecting which topic, it wasn't clear. I think they were honest. I think it was still coming out of the same pot of money. I think what I thought it was to help direct which evaluators it went to.
That's exactly right.
But
I think it was
the
the same pot of money, but then they just said, "Hey, SpaceWorks, you're getting a percentage of that pot of money. Air Force, Air Force side of the house, you're getting a percentage of that." I don't know how they divvied it up, but we don't have the insight in that. But what I liked about, and you nailed it, right, is if you had a specific, technology that was geared for Space Force, you could submit it through the Space Force, option, and you knew at least that person was a Space Force person. And, that alone is just getting you so much further along as opposed to a maintainer or whatever.
One second.
All of them. Yeah.
You said something. Did you know that? Because I didn't know that. I assumed it.
I assumed it.
I mean, it would make sense, right? But I also know with the volunteer force, depending on how many they got. Because one of the other logical questions was, hey, was there a budget? Hey, Space Force, you get 50%. Air Force, you get 50%. And when that question got asked, and they were told no, over and over again, and I believe them. I don't think there was a budget distinction. Track. The point is we're all saying the same thing. Like, oh, okay, they're beginning to make a better definition around it, and then boom, now it's. I don't know how I do it. Although I did try this the other day on another one.
Did mine?
Yeah.
Mine doesn't do it.
Found that out the other day. So my question to you is, I'll give you multiple choice. Is it because they're like, screw it, there was never a difference anyway? We'll take Air Force, we'll take Space Force. Or is this the beginning of SpaceWorks completely spawning off and doing their own thing and actually getting their own budget, which could also explain the reduced amount of awards? Like they're like, hey, we're beginning to slice it off. Now we've got no indication of that. But that also might actually give rise to like a year between. We say a year. It's indefinite. There is no phase 1 scheduled.
right
after this one. So maybe it's 10 years from now. We don't know, but I don't know. Just I don't know. This is all just like us fairy tailing and just kind of like theorizing conspiracies and all that. But I don't know what any other thoughts are.
No, it's a good question. I mean, shoot, man, it definitely is worth kind of like thinking through that a little bit, just so that when you do see things later down the road, it's like, oh, okay, maybe that's why you guys started doing these tweaks to the program.
Right.
They may have no idea. They just say, just lump it all together. We don't want to do that again. That was, terrible process. Didn't do anyone any favors. And, then
you're a terrible, listen, election year, there's a lot going on. You're a terrible conspiracy theorist. You need to come in here because you should have seen our team yesterday. They did that intentionally. We've compared it. They said it 40 times here. They said it 2 times here. They, Daniel Brewer freaking read every word of this thing, and he knows exactly what he's doing. I'm of course just joking. I'm sort of joking, but
that's all John saying that too.
Yeah, Brandon and our team, he posted that gif of Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and he's got the whiteboard, and he's like they're trying to like figure out the strategy. Anyway, it's pretty funny. No, we are doing a lot of maybe this, maybe that, maybe this, but here's the funny thing: almost none of it matters in terms of how we approach the phase 1. So yeah.
What what it does? So what it does is, if I do have that very specific Air Force one that I was going to go in with, that I actually have, now I just broaden it a little bit, right? It's like, hey, this does have very specific applications for the Space Force, but let me tell you how this can impact the Air Force as well. Air Force mission set. So I do that so I can make sure I could kind of level set and hit any person that ends up reviewing this thing. So you got to come from the perspective of the DAF, Department of Air Force, as opposed to specifically, this is only applicable to the Space Force, and that may be the truth, but you got to be creative and find ways that it has wide scale impact, because I think those are the ones that I've seen that do the best, that it improves everyone's lives. So that's probably the approach that I'm going to take.
Okay. I don't know. I don't think it's wrong. And I think we've kind of had conversations about this internally this week. I actually think this is maybe a good place to camp, at least for just a second, is, I'm thinking about like let's make it something approachable, like human performance. Like, we're going to make you more physically fit.
Yeah.
Which is going to increase readiness and, your up days and your deployability, which means we can kill more terrorists, like you just kind of go all the way down the line.
Right.
And this means so in a general sense, if I've got something human performance, I'm going to make the Air Force healthier.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm talking a very general application, because obviously these technologies are going to be a little bit more specific, just general. But the point is, that's real. But as you approach, how you only get so many slides, and quite frankly, you get 25 maximum. I wouldn't recommend using 25 if anyone's paying attention.
I'm the same way. Yeah.
No extra points for going to the bottom of the page. I think it makes sense to find a balance for both. And I'm guessing you'll agree, and hopefully we don't just land on the spot. Well, yeah, I agree, move press. But the point is like, all right, hey, you got to say, this is the tech, and we're gonna make you healthier. But, and AMC is a good example of like this MAGCOM that's like looking at their flight crews and their different things, like specific use cases in terms of like challenges that they're having with their flight engineers, or they've been particularly vulnerable one way or another. Any number of things, and we can talk about operational support teams and all these different things, musculoskeletal injuries and mental health. And my point is like AMC might be a good example in the flight crews to help communicate to the evaluator not only do we have a solution, we know where it belongs. Because again, go back to what the
100%.
topic is for. So are you just trying to balance both those things? Say, here's the general application, but make sure the evaluator knows that we know where the problem exists, or how are you dealing with that? Give us the secret.
No, this actually lends itself to why you and I can why two competitors can be in this conversation, right? Like quote unquote competitors, because we don't have to agree, and that's perfectly fine. So I would approach it that way, but then also if you do get that Space Force evaluator, it's possible,
right?
Then it's, how do I relate that to that person so that when they've got a stack of 10 phase 1 proposals that they got to review, that this, maybe that one that you're talking about, human performance enhancement, it's like, I could do something that's related to OSAM, or like, I know it's an acronym, but anyway, OSAM, like, what was that? On orbit, survivability, whatever. I forget the actual acronym, but basically, like, space-based capabilities. Oh, right. That one, yeah, that's the one. Like, or you can make it competitive.
Well, can I just really quickly, that's what we're up against, right? Is that meaning that in front of a space force? That's what we're up against, because you have to make it compelling to them as well.
That's exactly. So yeah. Okay, they've got that one in their pile that is speaking directly to them. They also have this other one that's kind of interesting, but man, that's not going to impact me whatsoever. I'd really love to see this company come through. Let's go with these guys. Well, okay, if I've got that human performance one, maybe if I stay somewhere in there, hey, not only is this going to impact this AMC mission in a significant way, but being able to implement this technology is going to allow those operators that are sitting at a desk for 10, 15 hours straight to be able to focus better, because they have this human performance enhancement capability where they can be able to make decisions better. And it's proven because they've done trials and Mm-hmm. You link it to those other missions, and it doesn't have to be, you really just put that in the defense needs slide. It's like, yeah, these satellite operators are sitting there for 8, 9, 10 hours straight. These UAV pilots are sitting there 8, 9 hours, 10 hours straight. There is fatigue in that.
Right. You're making it, I'm not digging on you. I'm saying, like, you're making it sound easier than it's just, because I'm sort of like, yeah. And then you go into the slide, and then you're like, okay, we got to talk about drone operators, and we got to talk about the cybersecurity folks, and the people that are on ground-based stations, and the people that are, and then by the end of it, you've got 6.5 point font trying to tell all the use cases that are, because you're like,
well, I'm not going to write your proposal for you, Brent, but
what do I do? Because it gets you. No, I think you're right. It is the balance, but you like, one thing that comes to mind for me, and I thought maybe we talked about this last time. Maybe we just privately we were chatting. There's going to be some level of, maybe that's not the right way to describe it, but some level of risk, right? You may actually get it wrong. We may get it wrong. Mm-hmm. And here's the funny thing: across our portfolio, wrong as in, like, the evaluators that you end up in front of may not. They may have been like, no, they should have showed me way more specific.
Absolutely, that's the part you can't control. Yeah.
Meanwhile, at the same time, you could have taken that exact same approach, and another evaluator like, this is exactly it. Yes, now I see the big picture and how it fits. So there is no. That's why it's important to probably have this conversation, right? AFWERX on these webinars sure as hell aren't going to tell you, because they don't know. They don't know either. All they're going to do is put these evaluators through this volunteer crash course, right? Yeah. And say, hey, here's how you evaluate technical merit. Here's how you evaluate defense need. Here's how you do commercialization. Go, and you're at the mercy of it. So these are really important conversations to have. But it makes me sit here and say, like, and all. Here's the other thing too. I think is true. And I don't know if you've experienced this, like, because we were talking about this yesterday. Like, hey, we gotta like build a strategy and then execute it. But it's almost like for our teams, I think you agreed with this, and tell me if you still do. We got to build one strategy that's going to get executed in 20, 30 different ways, however many proposals, right? You know, depending on where they're at, the technology, where the application is, wherever else. So it's like, yeah, there's definitely a strategy that we put forth, but it's not an edict. You must do it this way.
Right.
It very robotic.
Yeah.
It's more of like, actually it makes more sense to highlight this at a larger level, where sometimes it might make more sense. So like, I don't know, I got a drone technology, and let's say it's like, look at what they're doing with Replicator. Congress is putting so much money through DIU to do that, you know, to be very specific in those instances. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you give the framework, you know, the framework's got to be there on, I mean, the RFP provides the framework, quite frankly. And then, you know, it's up to each company's creativity and how you communicate that. And I've seen, and I think this is the part where I think if there's any, you know, small businesses here that are kind of running point on their own proposals. Not sure if there are, but if there are.
Yeah, actually, real quick while you're talking, I see 11 people are here. I'd love to know who's here. It's probably the team. So, but just pop in the comments and say you're here.
Okay. Yeah. As I'm talking through, so Brent, what was I saying before you rudely?
I don't know. I cut you off all the time because I talk fast and then I'm annoying. So
I kind of forgot. Can we rewind this thing? No.
Hold on, let me listen to. I got the. Okay, yeah, I was talking through. Okay, so I'm talking through this. I was saying before you. I don't know if I cut you off. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, I'm not.
No, that's not useful.
You ever seen the video of the grandma talking to her phone, trying to do the speak a text message, and she's like, "No, I didn't say that." And she's reading what she keeps writing. Yeah, now we're in
it hit me. It came back. So you know, this is good for again the new companies or the companies that are going on themselves. You know, AFWERX does provide a good layout of what they expect in the proposal and the tech volume, specifically in the tech volume, right? Like slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, slide 4. But if that flow doesn't work for you, rearrange it, right? I've seen proposals win where what was supposed to be, you know, technically in slide 8 was in slide 2. Lancaster, Amish country. Yeah, nice. Oh, Mark Wright. Yeah, GSI. Hey, good to see you, Mark. Sweet.
GSI. Hey, is it about taking care of you guys, or
no? That's it.
You need help with anything? Just let us know. We're kind of tapped right now, but we're willing to.
Oh man. So feel free to rearrange those things, right? Have the content, like the you know, sort of the theme of what they're asking for in there, but don't feel like you have to do it. Like if it doesn't tell your story the way you want it, then, you know, rearrange the slides. It's not gonna be a deal breaker. You're not gonna get non-compliance for that. That's been my experience. I don't know. I'd be curious to see how you rearrange slides, if you do at all.
Well, I can think of some funny stories of in the very beginning. I'm like, all right, this slide order sucks, and I would relabel stuff.
Yeah.
And this is very early on when I first started, and I would put it in a different order because it doesn't do a very good job of here's the tech and doing a chronological. I know. Move through it.
What's the problem? It doesn't. Yeah, it's not a good storyline.
Defense need after everything makes no sense, but it does that. It does actually. Here's a couple things. Couple things. Here we go. One, it does say in the solicitation it needs to be in this order.
I know. That's why I said
the order given. It does say that. I have personally. Okay, so we have a great partner. I'm not even going to tell you who they are because I don't want them to know either. No, we were doing a lot of slice and dice, and we were really successful. Probably, hands down, the most successful partner that we've had in terms of just I think we won seriously 87% over the past 2.5 years. If we apply, we're winning, and it's due to their tech more than anything else. A good example of that is we won last round, and we're submitting our Clan 1. And it got rejected. And they're like, hey, you need to have the key personnel slide and the commercialization potential in there. or something.
Mm.
If you recall, it's like the non-proprietary version of your plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, I can do that. So I go in there and I'm like, oh, that's weird. You're right. It wasn't in there. Let me go back to our submission and say, and pull it. And it wasn't in there. We submitted one with multiple sections missing.
Yeah.
How did that happen? By the way, you know, a lot of times when we send it out for design, we'll delete a bunch of slides just so that the designer does not have to do every single slide, but rather replicate it. And probably came down to the finish line. So that's like just me admitting, like, oh, that's what made it. But I've also seen, you know, especially for potential partners that come to us that are like won already, and then I'm like, okay, let me look at your phase 1 slides, and it's like no resemblance at all of the actual requirements. They just like threw stuff out there.
Yeah, man.
Which is kind of a funny. I think really all it speaks to is that's where evaluators don't care.
Right.
Contracting officers, we're sitting here saying it must be that, but evaluators don't care. It's a defense need, technical merit, commercialization. So I would say definitely still put it in the right order and make sure you have all the slides there. But within those, there's a lot of autonomy to bring it to life in whatever way you see fit. There
really is. Yeah, and that's the thing I think a lot of people probably don't realize, right? They're like, oh, they're asking specifically for this. I got to answer that but my answer sucks because we don't have millions and millions of dollars worth of sales. Okay, well, don't highlight that. Highlight maybe your IP or your, you know, beta users and where they're from and how many of those, you know, those are out there, you know, using the software or whatever in beta mode, or highlight your venture capital, highlight letters of interest, like, you know, something that puts you in a bad light, even though they asked for it, doesn't absolutely have to be in there. Again, take that with a grain of salt. Like, you know, compare that off of the RFP. We're just kind of talking about like what we've actually seen be successful and work through the system. And definitely, as long as you have the components of what they're asking for in there, arrange it however you need to make it like tell the story that you need to make. And you know, that's just going to improve your chances. Yeah. So curious what you thought some other interesting things on the RFP. Anything else stand out to you? I had one more thing.
Yeah, well, the one other thing, I'll make this bigger here for a second. Nah, I don't like that. This might be just me, my memory being foggy. We know what technical merit, defense need, and commercialization is, but I noticed that got broken out. And the definitions around it were a little bit more clear. And here in just a second, actually, just Cheryl, we see your question. We'll get to that in just one sec, because that's a really good question. So, am I crazy? Was that not in there in the way that it is right now?
No, it definitely was cleaned up, I would say. I didn't see
it was real clear.
Yeah, I didn't see the content of what they're looking for and how they're evaluating change. They're all equally weighted. So defense need, technical merit, commercialization potential. Those are all still in there, all explained. And again, I didn't do a side by side, but my glance at it was the same, nothing significantly different. And they're all equally weighted the same. So I didn't see anything that was different there. What was interesting, it also spoke to the value, like the feedback. Oh, there you go. You're gonna share a little bit? Cool. So it spoke to the feedback and like the adjectival ratings that they give, which I've never seen that before in an RFP. So that was a little new.
John, if you're still on, maybe give us some, because I know that you probably at least have some thoughts. So one thing that's helpful, especially if you're a small business in here, they changed where the specific instructions are. If this is true in specific topics as well, like, hey, you get a little bit of information, and actually this is a lot, but you don't get the full kit and caboodle. And even when you download this PDF, it's just a PDF of this. So where is it at? Where's it at? Well, you can go here in solicitation documents and instructions, or you can go here, component instructions. And wouldn't you know it, it's not, I need to stop and present and share screen and show that again. And we're going to go here to the actual. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Control F. Let's see if it'll. Sorry. Okay. I wanted to look at that just real quick. Oh, here is this it? Yeah, this is it. Yes. Okay. So this is where. No, I felt like it broke it out even cleaner somewhere. Am I crazy? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is it, right? And they're actually calling technical approach as opposed to technical merit, which is interesting. We're learning on the fly here. But the point is, I don't recall it ever being broken out in this way, which is really clean or cleaner than it's been. Is it? Would you agree? You're on mute, big dog. Randy, you are on mute. Literally no one can hear you when you're on mute. It's super unhelpful and makes for a bad live.
I was testing you.
I'm like,
I do recall. Yeah, John, I noticed that too. The volume 5. That was like one of the first things I looked at.
Which is beautiful. I think I did 23 one time in one of those.
And it's clear. It is so clear, like what's actually mandatory, what's as needed, and what's at time of award. And they did here. Go off on a little tangent, and I'll add to that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they did listen to me. Hopefully, but they actually put in attachments that are already PDF fillable. That is huge, guy. Like that's very well received.
They're still a little wonky, but yeah, there's been some history with supplemental documents. So I agree. That's progress there for sure.
I would say though, on this evaluation criteria, nothing really significantly changed. I think they just cleaned up some of the language in the first paragraph, but they typically do break out those sub bullets there.
Yeah, I almost want to compare it, but the point is like, hey, there's the language is there. This is what they're trained on. To the best of your ability, you need to hit each one of these, and you need to hit them in the manner that they describe. Not exclusively that, but use clear language when you do that. So, yeah, okay. One question that came up was, they are getting questions. Like they're trying. It's like, why can't they just make a specific attachment? They're like, it's they don't care where the page breaks. They're very like, you can't like pull them out in the way that you need to. Cheryl asks, so we are getting about at time.
Yeah,
but I think this is a good question. Is people are like they're building their proposal and then like kind of bringing home some of the business development they've done as it relates to
letters of support,
who you've been engaging with, which ultimately the ask is like, hey, would you provide us letter of support, which will hopefully provide a push. Like letters of support are not an evaluation factor, but ideally they communicate a stronger defense need because like, hey, we've got warfighters or maybe a strong commercialization. Hey, we've got venture capital or we've got industry. So I'll ask you, how do you feel about letters of support overall? And then the specific question is like, how many do you need? Does rank matter? And does it who you get them from matter? Whether it be industry or whatever else.
Yeah. Yes, and yes. So how do I approach it? If we've got an Air Force, Space Force one, let's just call it Department of Air Force. I definitely am pursuing one or two of those. And then I'm pursuing one or two, maybe from a venture capital firm, if they're in the mix. If they're not in the mix, forget about them. Not applicable. And then I'm looking at business to business, particularly someone that's a buyer or a potential buyer of that product. Businesses know businesses, so that's typically pretty easy, right? Like if they're a good company, they're going to know other good companies, and they're going to be able to vouch for them and put it in a way that makes it sound like that other company finds that technology or the proposed solution, they find that valuable. Like, make it all sync up, because that evaluator, don't just put a letter of support that you got from 2018 in there that is for a different program, but it's a letter of support. So just throw it in there, right? Like, that's lazy. Get something that is applicable to that program that you are proposing and how you're proposing it. So how you're applying it for that specific use case, and get that person on the Air Force, get that venture capital firm, get that business to business potential customer to write that letter of support. And I always shoot for 1 to 2 of each of those, right? 1 to 2 from an Air Force person, 1 to 2 from venture capital, and 1 to 2 from like commercial customer, business to business. If you get more, fantastic. But to me, there's a.
So so if you get 15, you think they should put 15 in there?
No, not at all. No, that's for me, that's diminishing returns. I'm spending that time now on proposal, right? I got my letter of support check. Question then, I think for maybe you, Brent, is how do you think evaluators are looking at that? I've got my own opinion, but no, I'm not putting in a ton of letters of support. They're in there, but not a ton.
We don't have time to unpack it completely, but I think what you kind of described was a hierarchy, which is where I think primary letter of support is Department of the Air Force. Second in the hierarchy is DoD. You're talking Army, SOCOM, Navy, that sort of thing, showing that defense commercialization piece. Third, it would be, whether it be venture capital, just investment, commercialization in terms of like validation there. And then I think it's kind of grouped into the same thing as like potential partnerships, potential buyers, that sort of thing, showing the marketability of it. So I do think there is a hierarchy there.
Don't forget FFRDCs as well. I think that lends itself to technical merit, research institutions. Yeah,
I think that's fair. I think that's actually really fair. So ideally, hey, 2 Department of the Air Force and 1 of the other ones, which puts you at about 5 or 6. I don't ever want to be putting more than 7, like 7, max. Because here's the thing, going back and just a general philosophical look at letters of support, I don't think they get read almost ever. I don't think they get read at all. Like, well, and here's the other, because another part of Cheryl's question was, does rank matter? If I'm an evaluator, I'm going to skim them. I'm going to write for our partners, we write the letter of support for them, and we make it very specific to who's writing it, and clean it up and try to make it short so that people can skim it. But reality is, like, I'm not going to go no, I'm going to look at it. Oh, interesting, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to look who signed it. And so her question was, like, does rank matter? It's like, well, I don't know. If you're evaluating it and you see a senior airman versus a colonel, would you determine that there's more value there? I think, but I also think that there's an argument the other way too. If some staff sergeant saying, hey, I have this problem every day, I'm on the flight line, and this addresses what I do, as opposed to, again, a colonel who's not experiencing that pain point every day. So it's like, if you're engaging with a tech sergeant, I don't think it's necessary. Like, hey, can you get your boss to sign this? I think you just kind of take it within context. So does it matter? No one will tell you that it matters, because there is no. It's not an evaluation factor. It's not codified anywhere. It's just supposed to emphasize it. It's more of the game. There's just kind of the game theory being played here. They could be thinking this. If I do this, they could do this. If I do this, they could do this. So
it could take that good to an excellent. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. Hey, we're up against time, and I want to just keep it super, super clean. But Cheryl, reach out to if there's like more questions there, or anyone else that has it. I think it's something good to be thinking about, because it's time consuming, and it takes, it's an important piece of it. But look, I've got things to do. I am busy, man. So
I'm just kicking. I'm gonna go ahead back to the pool here. So we don't have much to do around here.
Yeah. No, as always, a lot of fun. We'll be back at it next week. Everyone will be at AFA. We don't fly out you want to fly out to DC and do live there?
Do a live event? Maybe we might have to. I don't know.
We won't.
We will. No.
But we will do a live. We'll be back ready to rock and roll. But all right, any party shots?
No, this is good. Covered some good ground. A lot of things. I mean, shoot, look, just this RFP, this one RFP, we covered an hour's worth of. I mean, some of it was Brent pontificating, but no, it was good.
Yeah.
It's good analysis, though. I would say it was good getting into some of the differences, and you saw things that I didn't see actually, so it was good.
Yeah, and there may be more that we dive into next week. So, all right, we'll close it there. Randall, have a great day. Bruce, I'm good. How are you? We've been doing a LinkedIn Live event for kind of leading up to this next proposal round, and normally AFWERX is a webinar, and they like, okay, this is the program, this is what we're doing. They ask us questions, and they give really cagey answers, and like, just useless stuff, and like, hey, I kind of call them sister company. They work quite closely. Guy who runs that, we've been doing LinkedIn Live, and be like, okay, what's actually on here? So it's actually been a lot of fun. But anyway, apologies for stepping in a couple minutes late. Hey, Creighton, how are you? Yeah, really good. All right, Bruce, you and I connected at least a little bit earlier this week, just kind of like, hey, we're kind of taking a look at how we're going to approach this stuff, and we're thinking through stuff. So I don't know if there's any updates. We want to dive in it with Creighton here, and I understand too, like if there's kind of a different philosophical approach to this stuff, that it might pivot how we work together, or if we work together, at least right now. So just maybe that'd be a good place to start. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. And we should see like the customer memorandum, and just the requirements that come out for that. Like I'm guessing like right around Christmas, right? So you're probably gonna want to start moving on that, shaping that before it actually releases, because they used to do pre-releases where it's like, okay, now we got 60 days. The pre-release doesn't exist now. It's like it opens and it's like submit, So that's kind of how it works. Yeah, exactly. Do you have a few of those? I I don't know anything about. Okay, so yeah, I won't. I'm not. I try not to be that annoying about it. So- but they do exist. But I did not add them to the.